or so let me just copy this. Okay, I'm going to do the electrolysis of copper sulfate. Okay, so this is your diagram for electrolysis. Or is diagram mein you've got so we're going to have copper sulfate aqueous now. Okay, so yahan pe in this diagram we're going to have yahan pe it's not going to be NaCl, it's going to be it's going to be CuSO4 aqueous. Anisha, Abia, Haseeb, can you hear me? As it's going to be CuSO4 aqueous. As a CuSO4 aqueous, where you've got copper ions and you've got sulfate ions. Okay, that's so the cathode will have two options. The cathode will have Cu2 plus and it will have just Cu2 plus. The other side, it's going to be SO4 minus 2. The anode will attract SO4 minus 2. Okay, that's basic electrolysis. The negative ions they get attracted to the positive anode, and the positive ions they get attracted to the negative cathode. Okay, और यहाँ पे मैं I'll add what does a cathode do? This side is cathode, and cathode has got a negative charge on it, which is why it attracts positive ions. And what happens? Reduction happens. Anyone who comes or who reaches cathode, reduction will happen to it, which means that it's going to gain electrons. How is it going to gain electrons? If you look over here, the electrons are coming, and whoever comes over here, it's going to gain electrons. And whoever is on the other side, that's going to lose electrons. So oxidation, ऊपर से copy कर लेते हैं. अच्छा, so at anode, okay, लिख लेते हैं. So at the other side, oxidation will happen at anode, the positive side. So you got the positive side, oxidation. Anyone who comes to the positive side, usually a negative ion, it's going to undergo. It's going to undergo oxidation. So you've got these two sides, cathode and anode. Kal maine kya bataya tha? What other substances are going to be present in copper sulfate aqueous? At anode and at cathode, what other thing will be present? Apart from copper ions and sulfate ions, it's going to be water. And I told you that water is not going to ionize a lot, so don't think of water as H+1 or OH ions. Water will be water, and water will be present on both sides because it's neutral. So water is everywhere. It's in that. So water is everywhere. So who's going to gain electrons? It's either going to be copper 2 plus or water. Any one of them is going to gain electrons. How do you figure out who ends up gaining electrons? Open the data booklet. Remember, open the data booklet. So you've got two options, copper 2 plus or water. That's the question. Who gains electrons, right? That's the question mark. Out of these two, who's going to gain electrons? So you're going to look for equations, and remember, higher E0 is the one that gains electrons. The answer to the above is higher E0 gains electrons. So remember, we're only talking about gain of electrons. There's not going to be a loss of electrons, only gain of electrons. So if I open the data booklet, और वहां पे मैं जाता हूँ, ठीक है, और so here's the data booklet in front of you. So remember, I've got two options. I either have copper, जो कि पता नहीं क्या है, किधर गया copper? Copper is somewhere. एक सेकंड इसको रब कर ले. अच्छा, so copper is still not here. Copper is here. यहाँ पे. So I've got two equations for copper. I've got if you look carefully, I've got copper plus 2 and there are two of them. Copper plus 2 can either gain 2 electrons or it can gain 1 electron. Okay, so I'm looking for the equation in the forward direction. I'm only talking about reduction. I mean, at cathode, that's the only thing that will happen. Okay. So यहाँ पे ना, it's they can only gain electrons. So you got two equations for copper plus 2, and you got one equation for water. Okay, so that one equation for water is going to be water gaining electrons. Where is it? It's this one. You can see water and it is gaining electrons. There is no other equation. Okay, you got two equations for copper and you got one equation for water. And who ends up gaining electrons? The one that has the higher E naught. So who's got the highest E naught over here? You've got so you got 0.34. So 0.34 I think is the highest E naught. This is 0.15. This is minus 0.83, right? So out of these three equations, or I'll just copy this. So out of these three equations in the data booklet, so out of these three equations, I was able to figure out that it's the first equation, which is copper plus 2 is the one that's going to gain electrons. And I'm going to write that equation. Okay. So it's going to be copper plus 2 that gains 2 electrons and forms copper. And its E naught is 0.34. That's the highest E naught. यहाँ पे लिख भी देते हैं, who gains electrons? The one that has the high E naught has the greatest tendency to actually gain electrons. E naught is 0.34 volts, and I'll put इसको highlight भी कर दिया, ठीक है? So who gains electrons? The one that has the highest E naught. ठीक है, idea clear? It's very simple. You just figure out who's present at cathode. You just try and figure out whatever the substances that you have, copper plus 2 or H2, find equations where they're gaining electrons forward direction. And the one that has the highest E naught, that is the one that's going to gain electrons. That's it. That's your reaction. You'll get a copper deposit on the cathode. Okay, anode, who's going to lose electrons? Ye clear hai? Anna clear hai? Alicia, obvious is clear. अच्छा, फिर दूसरी side पे you've got who's going to lose electrons, right? So that's the question now. तो दूसरी side पे आ जाते हैं. You got two options. You got so you got water and you've got ये दूसरा क्या था? SO4 minus 2. You got H2O and SO4 minus 2. And the question now is out of these two, who's going to lose electrons? And who loses electrons? The one that has the lower E naught has the greater tendency to actually lose electrons. So now I'm going to open the data booklet again, and I'm going to try and figure out equations where water and SO4 minus 2 are losing electrons. You can remember losing electrons. Anode where gain nahi hoga, it's going to be loss of electrons. So open the data booklet again, and now I've got this one equation where SO4 minus 2 loses backward where it loses electrons, right? So I've got 2.01 volts. I've got two equations for water. I've got ये वाली loses electrons, and I've got this one, and it also loses electrons. ठीक है, और तीनों में who loses electrons? The one that has the lowest E naught. It's 1.23 volts. 1.77 is other, and 2.01 is also greater. So out of these three equations, I had three options. Two options for water losing electrons and one option for SO4 minus 2 losing electrons. So out of or इसको इधर copy कर लें. अच्छा, ये मेरी working होगी data booklet के ऊपर ही. So out of all these options, the one that actually ended up losing electrons is the one that's got, it's the water equation, which is 2H2O. और उसको backward में लिखना है, ठीक है? So it's see 1.23, that's O2 plus 4H plus 1. And you got 4 electrons, right? So, and that's 1.23 volts. So that's our reaction. I said that's our reaction at anode. बस ये कहानी ठीक है और ये करना है. अच्छा, and so, I mean, if so, that's pretty much it. Oxygen is getting produced at anode, and copper is getting produced at cathode. ठीक है, सीप clear है ये. अब ये Alicia, is this clear? So that's about it for this one. So the one thing about remember electrolysis is the opposite of a cell. So one thing about one very small comment about the voltage on the battery, okay, that is that the voltage of the battery must be greater than the voltage difference between the two equations, because the battery has to be more powerful. Well, the battery is the one that's deciding where the electrons will flow. Okay, so the battery voltage must be greater than the voltages of or the potential difference between these two. क्योंकि ये देखो ना, ये higher voltage है, right? So electrons, and this is the lower voltage. Electrons will always travel from the lower voltage to the higher voltage, right? So if the battery is not functioning properly, electrons should flow from this side, I mean the right side. So they should travel and they should go to the other side, which is the higher potential side. तो वो तो उल्टा हो जाएगा reaction. That's how an electrochemical cell operates. So if the battery is supposed to actually do the opposite, if it's trying to, if it wants to make this the cathode and this the anode, the battery must have a voltage that must be greater than the voltages on these two things. वरना तो battery का कोई फायदा नहीं है. Yes, Alicia, exactly. But this equation is kind of pointless, right? 1.77. Because it's never going to actually, I mean, you're never going to select that. Okay. So it's pretty much always going to be 1.23, unless you have something that, agar iodide hota na, let's say I minus 1 hota yahan pe. If you add I minus 1, so water is 1.23, I minus 1 is 0.54, that's an even lower potential. So you'll select I minus 1. Even if you or कोई negative ion भी हो सकता था. Let's say you've got Br minus 1. Even Br minus 1, this one, that has a lower potential as well. So Br minus 1 bromine will get discharged. So the point is that how आपका point ठीक है, this 1.77 is probably not going to be used ever. I said, just 1 second. अच्छा, ये हो गया खत्म electrolysis. the very last thing, ठीक है? अच्छा, the last point about this one, ठीक है? One very minor point. ये आखिरी point समझ आया था कि the battery voltage, the battery EMF, it should be greater than the potential difference of your two equations. The battery has to be more powerful. Then electrolysis will happen. Okay? So that's one minor point. Okay? Otherwise, the circuit will not work. If the battery has a lower voltage, then it won't be able to drive electrons the way it is doing in this electrolysis. So बिल्कुल आखिरी end में, I mean, there are a couple of things left related to catalyst, and but there's one very important thing, and that is related to Faraday constant. Okay, that's related to moles. So we can talk about, it's about so moles and electrolysis. Yeah, moles and electrochemistry. So now there's a thing called the Faraday constant. So Faraday constant is going to be used when you're doing a moles question. So what is the Faraday constant? It's the charge on 1 mole of electrons. Okay, that's the Faraday constant. Like if 1 mole of electrons, what is the charge on that? So how do you figure that out? So how many electrons will there be in 1 mole? 1 mole ka matlab hai you've got 6.02 times 10 to the power 23 electrons, right? And every electron has a charge of 1.6 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 coulombs. So one electron has a charge of 1.6 times 1.6 times 10 to the power minus 19 coulombs. And you've got 1 mole of electrons. So 1 mole of electrons, you multiply it by 1 mole of electrons, which is the Avogadro's constant. And the answer that you're going to get is the Faraday constant is going to come out to be 96,500 coulombs approximately. Okay, that's the value for Faraday constant. Okay, 96,500 coulombs. And that's about it. I mean, there's this additional piece of information that you must have with yourself. And plus there's an equation which you have already studied related to electricity in physics, and that is Q is equal to IT. Ek to ye ho gaya. That's number 1. You must remember that. And number 2 is Q is equal to IT. Okay, Q equals current into time. Okay, time will be in seconds and current will be in amperes, and that is equal to charge. Okay, so you already know about this formula, Q is equal to IT, current into time, or current is charge per second. So that is what current is. And that's about it. And you're going to get very simple questions. I'm going to do one question. For example, they might ask you. Okay, so there's this simple question, and the question is, calculate the volume of hydrogen gas, H2 gas, as a volume of H2 gas if 0.5 ampere current is passed for 1.5 hours in the electrolysis of H2SO4. When electrolyzing H2SO4. So calculate volume of H2 gas if 0.5 ampere current is passed for 1.5 hours when electrolyzing H2SO4. As a first thing, how would you calculate the volume of H2 gas at RTP? Remember, this is at RTP. So you're given the time and you're given the current. So what you can do is you can figure out charge. So you can figure out Q is equal to IT, which is, kisi bas calculator, try and do this. It's a current charge sorry, current into time, that's 0.5 amperes. And 1.5 hours is 1.5 into 16 to 60 seconds. So how many coulombs is this? Has anyone calculated the color? What is the value in coulombs? क्या बना किसी ने calculate किया? So we're getting so 2700. We're getting 2700 coulombs, right? 2700 coulombs. Achha, what do I do with that? Okay, I figure out coulombs, right? Now to calculate volume of H2 gas, I want moles. Achha, what the Faraday constant does is, the Faraday constant helps you convert the charge into moles. Like, what is the Faraday constant? Faraday constant is, Faraday constant is what is the charge on 1 mole of electrons, right? So I know that 1 mole of electrons has a charge of 96,500 coulombs. So I can use ratios, right? So if I have 2,700 coulombs, how many moles of electrons are flowing through the circuit? So I can just use crisscross unitary method and I can figure out X, and X will come out to be what it. So it's going to come out to be 2,700 divided by 96,500. And how many moles is this? How 1.5 hours is 1 hour 30 minutes. अच्छा moles कितने हैं? ये clear है कि Faraday constant, this is what will help you. Faraday constant will convert charge into moles of electrons. It's going to try and figure out how many electrons are flowing. If this amount of charge is flowing through the circuit, 1 mole of electrons has 96,500 coulombs. 2,700 coulombs will have how many electrons? तो क्या value है इसकी? So इसकी value 0.028 moles, right? So you're getting 0.028 moles, and if you're getting depending on how many 0.0279, so ठीक है. Make sure you at least use 3 significant figures. 0.0279 moles. Now I know the moles of electrons. You can remember I know the moles of electrons flowing through the circuit. Now I can have an equation. How is hydrogen gas produced? Because the acid has H+1 and that H+1 probably got discharged and it ended up forming H2 gas, right? So I know the moles of electrons now. The moles of electrons are 0.0279. It gets 0.0279 moles. So उसका क्या होगा? H2 क्या होगा? That's going to be half of that. What is half of that? That's 0.014 something. इसकी value बता दो. What's so this one is 0.0139. So 0.0139 moles, and once you have those moles, you can just multiply by 24 dm cube to figure out the volume, which is वो बता दो क्या वॉल्यूम बनता है इसका. Into 24, what do you get for this? So this one is 0.336. DMQ. So let's say, so basically, this is these two things. You just have to remember these two things when doing calculations. That Faraday constant, you can use Faraday constant to figure out okay, if you know the charge on 1 mole of electrons, 96,500 coulombs, so you can convert moles of electrons into charge, or you can convert charge into moles of electrons. And once you have moles of electrons, every equation has moles of electrons. You can just use ratios to figure out the moles of the other substances. ठीक है, ये clear है? ये question is this clear? ये दोनों चीजें clear है? अच्छा, और इस पे एक और चीज है कि I mean this notation, this is referred to as I mean the thing I did over here, this is called F equals L E. It's basically the same thing. L is the Avogadro's constant and E is the charge on one electron. So F is equal to LE. That's, I mean, you'll often see the Faraday constant written as F is equal to LE. So that's about it. There are a couple of things related to catalyst, which we'll probably do in reaction kinetics. Yeah, and me calling it. There's one thing that's related to entropy as well. I'll just go through it, but right at the end. Okay? We'll probably do past papers now. So let me just open a few. ये वाला कर लेते हैं. So let's start with the first question here. Okay, so the first question is kind of a strange question. It's actually you've got, he's saying that there's an overall reaction of photosynthesis, which is this one. Okay, that's your overall reaction. And remember, a redox reaction is made up of two half equations, which are, one of them is oxidation. I mean, this one I think is the oxidation equation. And then there is a reduction equation as well. The reduction equation and the oxidation equation, they both get added up, and then you get the overall equation. I mean, this is what happens. Like, we did this many times. So we did this many times, like over here. How do you make an overall equation? You got a reduction equation, which is there were 4 water molecules gaining electrons to form H2 and OH ions, and there was an oxidation equation where electrons were being lost. You added them up, you got the overall equation, right? This is और भी जगहों पे किया था. So this is basically what you do. But in reactions, maybe this is, that's a chain reaction. 1 second. As in reactions, maybe you had the same thing. It's what you did was you had an oxidation equation, you had a reduction equation, higher gain, lower lost, and you added them up and you got the overall equation. That's it. So now in this question, they've given you the overall equation already. What is missing is the reduction equation. Use these equations to reduce the half equation for the reduction. So this equation is given. Some equation, let's call that X, has to be added to this equation to give you this, right? So So this reduction equation plus the oxidation equations should give you this thing. I mean, that's the idea. That's how the overall equation is made. तो वो कह रहे reduction equation ढूंढो. I mean, now so far we had the reduction equation, we had the oxidation equation, and we just added them up and we got the overall equation. Ab original equation, one of them is missing, right? So what do? You just subtract it. Okay, I'm going to try and make the reduction equation. So I've got 6 water molecules, and so the first thing is, if you look carefully, बल्कि इस equation को भी छोड़ते हैं. If you look carefully, before adding the two half equations, the oxidation and the reduction equation, the electrons gain and loss are made equal, right? The equations, they get multiplied by a certain number and then you add them, right? So अगर यहाँ पे closely देखो ना, you got oxygen over here. So in the overall equation, the oxygen probably came from this equation, and so वहाँ पे in the overall equation you got 6 O2s, right? So there are probably going to be 6 O2s over here. This equation probably got multiplied by 6. So there's going to be 6. This will become 24 H plus 1, and this one will become 24 electrons. Okay? So I just multiplied by 6. The reason I did was the overall equation has 6 oxygens, right? So this equation getting added up with this other equation, which is unknown. How do you get 6 O2s? The only way you can get 6 O2s is यहाँ पे you had 6, right? This one यहाँ पे you got. Why did you get 2 Fe3 plus in the final equation? Because you multiplied by 2 Fe3 plus, right? So the same thing I did over here. I had 6 O2 in my overall equation. In my half equation, I had just 1 O2, so I just ended up multiplying it by 6. ताकि in the final equation, I'm going to get 6 O2s, right? ये clear है? ये बात समझ आइए? Jian, Azib, Anna, is this clear? Lisha? अच्छा, so फिर से वो कर देता हूँ, एक एग्जांपल कर लेते हैं ना कि I've got but ये बात समझ आइए कि you have two equations, they get added up and you get the overall equation, which is over here. Alicia, is that part clear? अच्छा, but before the equations get added up, the equations are also multiplied by certain numbers, right? कि मतलब यहाँ पे अगर इधर equation originally क्या थी? It was 1 Fe3 plus 1 electron forming Fe2 plus, but we ended up multiplying it by 2, right? The reason we ended up multiplying it by 2 was that the number of electrons lost and gained, they have to be equal, right? The final equation में Fe3 plus के साथ क्या आ गया? You got a 2 with it, right? When the original equation you didn't have 2 with it, but when you added them up, you had to multiply it by 2, and you got 2 Fe3 plus, right? So यहाँ पे मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि this equation, if I rub this off, so what I'm saying is that this equation is getting added up with this unknown equation, and you're getting this equation at the end, right? That's your overall equation. So if you're getting 6 O2s at the end, right? So there must be 6 O2s over here. That means कि add होने से पहले ना, this would have been multiplied by 6. There must have been 6 O2s over here. So Alicia, is that point clear? अभी हमें इसका नहीं पता, लेकिन I see 6 O2s over here, right? So that means this entire thing has to be multiplied by 6. So this will become 12, and this would become 24, and this would also become 24, right? So now listen to this carefully. This gets added up with X, I mean whatever X is, and it gives you 6 CO2s and H2Os. Okay, so what is X? How do you get 6 CO2s and 6 H2Os? What thing is getting added to this that gives you, finally at the end, gives you 6 CO2s and 6 H2Os? So there must be 6 CO2s in this equation. Is that clear? Because 6 CO2s get added up with 12 H2Os, you're going to get this, right? Actually, you're not going to get this. How do you add this with this equation to give you 6 H2Os? There must be minus 6 H2O over here. But the reactants of this equation get added up with the reactants of this equation to give you this. यही हो रहा था ना कि how did you get these कि ये and these two got added up and you got this, right? So I already have the answer. The final overall equation is this one. So what should I add to 12 water molecules to give me this as the product? So I should add 6 CO2s and I should add minus 6 H2Os. Then I'm going to get this thing in my reactants. It's simple math. It's this equation getting added up with this equation to give you this. So I just have to figure out, okay, 12 water molecules, what do I need to add so that I get this thing? Is that clear? अभी इसको छोड़ दो कि -6H2 माइनस कहां से आ गया, ठीक है? We don't care about the minus. I'm just saying it's simple math, right? You had 12 water molecules, but over here I've got just 6 water molecules. So what got added over here? -6H2O got added over here. And there's 6 CO2s over here. Where did that come from? There must be 6 CO2s over here, right? Achha, look at the products, right? So my final product is going to be this thing. Achha, first thing, 6 O2s, right? So I got 6 O2s from here. Where did the glucose come from? The glucose must be coming from this equation over here. That must be C6H12O6, right? The right side for the equates. This got added up with 6 O2s to give you this. What happened to the 24H plus 1 and the 24 electrons? They probably got cancelled out. So there must be minus 24H plus 1 and there must be minus 24 electrons. अब इन दोनों equations को add करो, that's going to be your overall equation, right? Okay, 12 water molecules, 6 CO2 and minus 6 H2. Add this stuff into this and you'll get this. Right side पे glucose plus 6 O2s, right? Glucose plus 6 O2s. 24H plus 1 plus 24 electrons. There is no 24H plus 1 and 24 electrons in the overall equation. So there must be minus 24H plus 1 and minus 24 electrons. So यहाँ पे just like a math equation, I just figured out this must be the equation that got added to this to give me this. और आखिरी काम ये, an equation never has minus signs, right? So how do you get rid of the minus sign? All you have to do is just rearrange stuff. If there's minus 6H2O, take it to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to rearrange this. Minus 24H plus 1, minus 24 electrons, bring it to the other side, the left side. So it will become plus 24H plus 1 plus 24 electrons. And in my product side, I'll have glucose, which is C6H12O6. Okay, minus 6H2 to the other side, that's plus 6H2O. So that is my is the missing equation, that the missing half equation. Is this question clear? ये वाला ये थोड़ा टेढ़ा सा question था, ठीक है? But is that clear? And I can just clear it, and I can just do इधर ही जाके ना कि फिर से एक idea दे देता हूँ कि this is what he asked for. कि he did not give me this equation, right? So if he did not give me this equation, I had two half equations. One of them is not known. I said one of them is not known. So overall, you can see that copper, where did the 2Fe3 plus come from? 2Fe3 plus must be over here. Over here I see copper 2 plus, but I don't see any 2Fe2 plus, right? So 2Fe2 plus must be over here. But I also had plus 2 electrons. So why don't I have plus 2 electrons over here? There must be minus 2 electrons over here, right? You just have to rearrange this, get the minus 2 electron to the other side, and ताकि minus खत्म हो जाए, ठीक है? Equations usually don't have minus signs in them. Chemistry equations, well, they can, but usually, conventionally speaking, they don't. ठीक है? So that's your missing equation. That's exactly what we did. So ये फिर कल करते हैं इसकी worksheets और, ठीक है? This was the most of the other questions are going to be very typical questions, ठीक है? चले, ठीक है? Okay, everyone. इसको एक सेकंड सेव भी करना है। ये मैं शेयर कर रहा हूँ।